And I hear him outside of the door and he says, "Nurse, I'm going to need you to come inside this room with me." And I'm thinking,
Stop.
I don't know how to tell you this, but like, I'm so sorry, you're pregnant. And I just stared at him. He's like, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, "No."
So you had your heart so set on going to the University of Alabama.
Yes.
What was it like realizing that dream wasn't going to happen?
Yeah. Oh, I was very, very sad. And so I had to call everybody. I'm like, "Hey, surprise, the baby's here." Everyone was like, "What?" It was just a realization that everything had changed. You know, like, you're not a kid anymore. I'm going to be somebody's mom at 18. And it was just like reality check.
The time before this baby is here is so incredibly crucial. You know,
Right.
You've got to do as much as you can to properly prepare for yourself because life completely changes once you have that baby.
Getting ready for college and all these things are supposed to happen, and that was the plan. And so now I'm sitting here on my spring break, literally reevaluating my life because it's all about to change.
It all does. I
Yeah, it
mean,
does.
When you experiencing something as traumatic as an unplanned pregnancy, you kind of learn to pivot. So Krystin Godfrey knows firsthand what it means to pivot. At just 18 years old, she faced an unplanned pregnancy in the middle of her freshman year at the University of Alabama at Birmingham, just months after graduating high school. Despite the challenges of young motherhood, she persevered and earned her bachelor's degree in biology with a minor in chemistry in just 4 years. Now a wife, mother of 4, and an entrepreneur based in Birmingham, Alabama, Krystin wears many hats. She's a blogger, influencer, a licensed realtor, and the owner of a thriving real estate transaction coordination business. Through her work, she continues to inspire and empower others to embrace life's unexpected turns with resilience and determination. This is an episode you do not want to miss. Now, did you know that supporting our podcast can be fast, free, and will make a huge impact? Consider leaving a 5-star review, and it just takes 2 seconds. This truly helps more people find our message. And if you believe no student mom should have to face an unplanned pregnancy alone, you can make a tax-deductible donation by following the link in the show notes. Every bit of support helps us change lives. I can't wait for y'all to hear this message. Please welcome Krystin Godfrey to Unplanned and Untold. So Krystin, take us back to your senior year in high school before you found out you were pregnant. What were your dreams and aspirations for college?
Okay, so I've always been a super high achiever, and so I had a scholarship, a full scholarship to Alabama, actually to a couple of schools, but I had nailed it down. I had a presidential scholarship to Alabama, which was like the works, you know, like room and board, a study abroad. I got a laptop, like there was summer study included, everything basically. It was a dream come true and something I had been working really hard towards the entire high school experience, right? So I was planning to go to UA, to University of Alabama, to major in biology with a minor in chemistry. And then my ultimate goal was to go to medical school. I hadn't nailed down exactly what field of medicine I wanted, but I was thinking obstetrics or maybe pediatric medicine. But I knew I wanted to be a doctor. I wanted to be a doctor for many, many years. And I was really excited about it finally getting started on that path. If that makes sense.
Absolutely. So you really had everything designated out. You had a plan and you were ready to execute that plan.
Absolutely. I had best laid plans. That's what I like to say.
Wow. Yes. So when did you figure out that you could be pregnant? Did you have any signs or symptoms?
So looking back, very, very minimal. It's like TMI, but we're all girls here, you know?
Yes.
I never
we're
had a
girls
period.
here.
Never had a regular period. So like missing a month, missing 2 months was like normal for me since I started my period in middle school. So that wasn't really what, kind of gave me like a heads up that something was wrong. But what's funny is that my mom and I had gone on my first campus visit since getting my scholarship, where we like met with the honors college president and met with all the professors, picked out my dorm. We were doing all the things. It was really, really fun. And so the day of that meet and greet that we went down to Tuscaloosa, I felt super, super achy the entire time. Just kind of like was coming down with something, like just kind of felt off. And my mom was like, "You okay?" I was like, I just feel like achy almost. So I'm like, I don't think I'm sick, but I just feel weird, you know? And she was like, "Oh, okay, maybe you're tired." You know, we did a lot of walking and all that. And I was super, super active. I was a dancer. So it wasn't like that was out of the ordinary for me to be super active. So, I just chalked it up to being tired or something like that. And I remember the entire way home, I slept the entire way home. And we were really excited. My mom and I used to like road trip and talk to each other the entire ride. And I was like,
Right.
I don't feel like talking. I'm just going to take a nap. And so the very next week, my sister had a softball tournament in Gulf Shores, and my entire family was going. I think it was spring break. And so
Okay.
over the weekend, I just kept feeling still super achy, right? And so I was like, I need to go to the doctor because like I just feel like I'm coming down with something. And I had actually had mono before like my freshman year. Like some
Okay.
weird mono outbreak went out through the girls' locker room. It was so gross, like looking back. And all of us got it. Like a bunch of us got mono. And I remember feeling like this, like achy. And I'm like, I know full
Sure.
well that I don't have that again. So I took myself to urgent care, because I'm just like, I gotta figure out what's going on. My mom like gave me money. She was like, take yourself. I took it myself, and I remember the doctor's face. He was just so, so sweet. I wish he was still there so I could like go knock and give him a hug because he was so sweet. But I was telling them, I just feel super achy, just weird, like sore kind of. My neck sore, like my face is sore. It was all like upper body. And
Okay.
he's doing an exam. He's like, when's your last period? I was like, honestly, I don't know. It's always been irregular. And he's like, okay, well, I'm going to have to pregnancy test you. And I'm like, sure,
Hmm.
that's fine. I mean, literally not thinking anything. It went over my head. And so he does. And I'm just sitting there. I'm like, hanging out in the room. And I hear him outside of the door. And he says, nurse, I'm going to need you to come inside this room with me. And I'm thinking,
Stop.
no, impossible. I'm like, impossible, impossible, impossible. And what's funny is they also did blood work, and my white blood cell count was a little high too. So he's like, does look like something's up with your white blood cell count. You could be coming down with something. We're going to check everything. And so he comes in and
Sure.
he tells me I'm pregnant. And I
By
remember
yourself
thinking,
too.
yes, I'm by myself. I'm 18 by myself.
18.
What is he supposed to do? Like tell me to call my mom and wait? He's just like, I don't know how to tell you this, but
Oh.
like, I'm so sorry you're pregnant. And I just stared at him. He's like,
Yeah.
are you okay? And I'm like, no. And he goes,
Wow.
do you have anybody to drive you home? I'm like, no, I drove myself here. He's like, do you need to call somebody? I'm like, no, I'm going to drive myself home. And he's like, what are you going to do? I was like,
Right.
I don't know. I don't know. I said, I'm just going to go home now. And I remember leaving out of the office, sitting in my car and thinking, I literally cannot believe this. This is unbelievable.
Do you in the car start thinking of a plan how to tell your parents? I mean, what
Yes.
is racing through your mind in that
Yeah.
moment?
So I had at the time, and I really still don't, when people that are close to me, I have no poker face. So I'm like, I've got to figure out, I've got to tell them something, and it's probably going to be the truth. I'm like, I don't know. Should I tell them now? Should I wait till we get back from our trip? Like, I'm already thinking of all the things because I'm like, this can't be happening. And I'm like, first, I'm even formulating a plan for my life. I'm like, okay, if
Right.
I can't go off to college, what am I going to do? Like, all in my head. And so I called my aunt, who is so, so sweet. And she's really good in situations where, like, comforting. So I called her
Right.
and she's like, oh no, like, what are you going to do? Like, do you need somebody to come by while you tell your mom? Like, what? And I'm like, I just needed to tell somebody. Like, somebody who would not, like, freak out and judge me, that kind of thing. She was like,
Absolutely.
everything's gonna be okay. Just go home and tell your mom. And so I did. I drove right home.
You ripped that band-aid off, girl. I mean, I have interviewed many women who have held onto that secret for months.
There's just no way I could have done it. Like, they'd have been like, something is really, like, what did they tell you at that doctor? Like, because you are just not yourself. So I walked in the house. My mom's like, how'd the doctor visit go? And I was like, I'm pregnant. And she's like, you're
I
what?
bet you she was not expecting that.
No, absolutely not. She was like, you're what? I said, I'm pregnant. And I was like, but you can't tell daddy. I was like, I don't want to tell him. She's like, you got to tell him. She's like, neither one of us are going to be able to hold this. Like, we're both the same. She's
Right.
like, there's just no way we could hold this for another week.
No.
Like, neither one of
Right.
us are going to be able to hold it. She's like, when he gets back in from walking the dog, you got to tell him. And
Oh
so
my
I
goodness.
did. He walked back in from walking the dog, and I was like, I'm pregnant.
You just
And
blurted out, like
yeah, I'm
rip
like,
that
Dad, I'm
Band-Aid
pregnant.
off.
And
Oh
I was,
my
I was,
gosh.
by this point, I'm bawling. Okay, like I'm calm now. And this the replay, I'm calm now, but I'm
Yes.
not. I am bawling at that point, and I had held
Oh
it
my
together literally
gosh.
until I got home to my mom. Right, and when I started talking to her, I'm absolutely a mess. Talking to him, he's a mess. He's furious, but my dad's like a shutdown furious. So he's like, I have
Okay.
to go take a walk. He leaves. He goes, and I'm like bawling. My mom's like, he's gonna be okay. We're gonna be okay. Everybody's gonna be okay. We're gonna be fine. Of course, they're both
Wow.
of them are furious at this point, but she's
Right.
like bringing it in, bringing it calm. He's trying to do the same thing, but we're all in disbelief at this point. So that's kind of how I told them. I just, like you said, ripped the Band-Aid off. Just boom. This is what's going on. Help. Help. I need your help.
So you have this conversation, and you said before y'all were planning on going on some kind of vacation or trip.
Yes. Yes.
So how does that pan out with them?
Honestly, well, I was like, I don't want to go. Like, I don't want to put a damper on everything. And he's like, no, you're going. We're all going. And I remember, like, I think he gave me the silent treatment the entire time.
Oh,
I definitely should not have gone. I should have stayed home. It was so miserable. I was so
yes.
upset with him that I like refused to leave the condo. It was just, it
Oh
was just one of those
man.
trips that you'll never forget because it was just so miserable. And I should probably ask my sister,
Absolutely.
like, how was the trip? Because I can't remember
Yeah.
if we
How is it
told
from your
her.
point of view?
Yeah, I can't remember if we told her about the baby before
Oh
the
my
trip or not.
goodness.
I don't think we did. I think we
Wow.
waited. So she probably thought like my sister's just being a jerk on my
Right.
softball trip. You know what I mean? But I don't think I told
Right.
her. I think I just kind of hung out in the room as much as I could. And I was just contemplating my entire life because I'm on spring break from
Sure.
school at this point. After spring break is when prom and graduation and getting ready for college and all these things are supposed to happen. And that was the plan. And so now I'm sitting here on my spring break, my last spring break at high school, literally
Wow.
reevaluating my life because it's all about to change.
And it all does. I
Yeah, it
mean,
does.
when you experiencing something as traumatic as an unplanned pregnancy,
Hmm.
you kind of learn to pivot. So, how do your parents end up coming to terms with the fact that you're pregnant as a senior in high school, about to graduate? Do
Yes.
they try to help make a plan for all of these plans that you had already made?
Yeah, for sure. So, one of the first things that we all did, and I remember thinking, like, I'm really glad my mom was super involved in like the scholarship process because she had a lot of knowledge about how everything worked. And so I was just kind of like, what's going to happen to my scholarship? Because I
Right.
knew once I got the scholarship from Alabama, I took nobody else seriously because that was where I wanted to go. So
Yep.
I hadn't really followed up with anybody else because I wasn't interested. But what my mom had me do, we went to the seminar, and they said it was basically like they were like, you send everybody that sends you a scholarship, like legally, you have the right at the time
Yes.
to ask for until April 15th to make a decision on your scholarship, right? And
Okay.
so my mom made me send all these letters out. She's like, send it even if you don't care, even if you don't want to go there. We're going to send the letters out because you just never know what if your plans change. So I had done that. I had sent out all these letters to everybody that had offered me a scholarship. And one of the places was UAB. And so, but I was sitting back with my mom, my mom went to UAB. I'm from Birmingham, born and raised. I had no interest in going to UAB at all. It was like, it
Okay.
may as well have been not school at all. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's kind of where I
Right.
had UAB. It was like, you didn't get into college kind of thing, which is a
Right.
phenomenal school, but that's how my mom was. And so I
Sure.
only applied to UAB because they came to the school one day and they were giving out t-shirts, kind of one of those things. All my
Oh my
friends
God.
are signing up. And I'm like, I don't even, they're like, do you want to apply? I'm like, no, I'm not going to UAB. Sorry, guys. And they're like, we'll give you a free t-shirt. And
Right.
I said, what the heck? And so I applied. And so
Wow.
I called the scholarship advisor when I got home and, we started formulating our plan. Like, this is okay. You can still
Right.
do everything that you plan to do. And I called them and I was like, hey, I'm reaching out. I had a life change and I was going to go to Alabama, but
Hmm.
I wanted to see if you guys will still honor the scholarship that you offer me. And she's like, okay, let me check. She's looking. She was like, actually, yes, we will. She said, but the funny thing is that we reached out to you a couple of times asking for transcripts. And she's like, you never sent your
Okay.
transcript. and we had to have those by a certain date, to actually confirm the scholarship. She said, but somebody from your school, we called your school, and somebody from your school was like, I'll send you the scholarship, the transcript for her. I don't know. She's not going to
No
UAB. I know she's
way.
not going to UAB. She's going to Alabama, but just in case, I'll send it over. So yeah, the lady at the front desk at
Wow.
my school actually had sent everything that they needed. So the
Oh my
scholarship was literally
gosh.
still intact.
Oh my
So it was a
word.
really, I know, it was a blessing. And I remember going back to thank her, like, thank you so much for sending that, because I literally had done nothing that they had asked because I wasn't interested at all. And it ended up being an
Right.
amazing choice for me, an amazing experience for me. So yeah, it was definitely a blessing
Wow.
for sure.
So you had your heart so set on going to the University of Alabama. What was
Yes.
it like realizing that dream wasn't going to happen?
Yeah. Oh, I was very, very sad. I
Mm,
was just so sad, but more sad than the school thing. It was just a realization
okay.
that everything had changed. Like,
Sure.
you're not a kid anymore. I'm going to be somebody's
Hmm.
mom at 18. And it was just like reality check. So I think I was less sad about the school thing than just the
Okay.
life changing of it all. I feel like
Absolutely.
school was very, like, that was kind of like my first realization, like, oh my goodness, you can't go there. And then my next realization was, oh my goodness, your life is about to change. And so that kind of overshadowed the school thing. So I think I got over
Yep.
Alabama very quickly compared to like the
Yes.
realization of all the things that were about to happen.
Absolutely. And at this point, you're still in high school. Does
Yes, I am.
anyone know in school that you're
So
pregnant?
my best friend knew, and my boyfriend at the time, they knew. And just like a handful, it was a very, very small, like, I kept it real tight. Now, I'm sure people like told, and I kept would hear like little rumors floating around, but I was
Mm,
not showing at all. Like I said, I was dancing still in great shape, and I just kept it like, when I would hear
wow.
a rumor, I'm just like, I literally ignored everybody. I was supposed to speak at graduation, and I knew if they
Okay.
found out, I was like, that's off the table. Like, it's just not happening. So I just
Right.
told nobody, kept things going business as usual, spoke at graduation. Nobody knew. Graduated and just like went on my merry little way. I literally just kept
Oh
it
my.
low key, and it was kind of one of those things, like, it could have been a huge deal if I had made it, but I just kind of ignored
Right.
everybody and was like, no, I'm fine.
I mean, those graduation gowns are massive. They hide a
Yeah.
lot. I could
Well,
see,
yeah, I didn't
how you
show
could easily
any,
hide that
and it
bump.
was so early on. Like, I found out so early on because I started feeling pretty bad early on. And so even by graduation in May, I was still very early on and not showing a lot. I didn't get real big. It's like your first baby and you're a teenager.
Right.
I didn't get very
Yep.
big at all anyway. So there wasn't even anything
Right.
really to hide at graduation. Like, looking back, I'm like, yeah, probably, if you were really looking for me to be pregnant, you could maybe tell from my face, but nothing major to hide at all.
So going into the summertime before you know you're about to start
Yeah.
college, what are you doing to prep for this new baby?
So I got a job. I actually got a
Okay.
job. Like, I found out I was pregnant and I immediately got a job. I had never gotten a job before. My parents are very much like, if you're in school or you're, doing something, you don't have to work if you don't want. And so I hadn't worked. So as soon as found out I was pregnant, I got a job at Books a Million. I was like, that's gonna be,
Okay.
I love books. Like, I love Books a Million. I
Yes.
got a job there. And so I actually was working the entire summer. And I also took, if I remember correctly, did I take any summer? No, I didn't take any summer classes because I was like, I've got to make some money. So I just worked the
Right.
entire summer and just was
Wow.
saving money and putting back stuff for the baby. And then one huge blessing is that I also accumulated a bunch of scholarships. I started applying for more scholarships when I found I was pregnant.
Wow.
So from March to May, I actually accumulated a ton of just cash scholarships that I would get to go towards school. And since I had a full scholarship, I knew that everything that I had accumulated for scholarship, I would get back in a refund because I already had
Wow.
my scholarship was already full tuition, full board, and all of my books. So that was a blessing as well.
Oh
So
my
I literally spent the summer
goodness.
applying for scholarships and saving money. I worked, I saved money, applied for
Wow.
scholarships, and that's really was my entire summer.
I mean, that is huge because I feel like a lot of women in unplanned pregnancies struggle during this time before the baby's born.
For
And
sure.
I always tell them, especially our student moms in the Baby Steps program, I tell them that the time before this baby is here is so incredibly crucial. You know,
Right.
you've got to do as much as you can to properly prepare for yourself
Hmm.
because life completely changes once you have
Right.
that baby.
Absolutely.
Completely. Wow. And that is such a beautiful thing to hear all you did.
I had the absolute support of my parents. That's one thing that I
Okay.
have to give them credit for. I'm sure they were so disappointed. This is not the way they expected my life to go.
Right.
And this is not the way they expected their lives to go. Like, they did not expect to be grandparents so young, but they had my back. And they were like on plan with me, like, this, whatever you want to do, we'll support you, kind of thing.
Wow.
So they're like, this is how I would save, this is probably what I would do. And we just kind of were
Yes.
working together. So I knew, and then even with what working, we were trying to figure out, like, what do we do with this baby?
Right.
What are we going to do with this baby while you go to school? And so my mom was like,
Right.
we'll make a plan. So let's try to see how many evening classes we can get you signed up for, so that once you
Wow.
do have the baby, we can kind of tag team. I'll be off work. Maybe your dad will be off work, and we'll just kind of tag team with the baby until we can really make a plan once the baby's a little older. So we were
Oh
all
my
like hatching a
goodness.
plan basically throughout this summer, trying to figure out what was going to happen when I had this baby.
Wow. So if we fast forward to right before your daughter is born, where are you in the semester? What does college look like?
So my daughter was due in October. Actually, she was due in November, the very first week of November. And UAB and most schools, I think, now have fall break in October. And so
Right.
in my brain, I was like, if I can just get to fall break,
Just
that
make it
is,
to fall break.
I'm like, if I could just make it to fall break, I have this baby and I'm going back to class. Like, I didn't even, I know I'm sure by like August, by the time school started, I was showing. But not like crazy. Like, I was wearing sweatshirts and stuff, sweats and all that kind of thing. And it's not abnormal to see somebody pregnant on a college
No.
campus. Like, there's adults on college campuses and stuff like that.
Sure.
So I never even went to any of the professors and was like, I'm pregnant. I'm going to have a baby. I'll be out of class, because my brain said if I can just get to fall break, then really the only things left is to study for exams, and then I'll just come back and take them, right? So, I'm a biology major, and I was actually doing really well in biology. I had like a solid B, close to an A. And that's one of the actually it was chemistry. That's one of the toughest classes you take as a freshman at UAB.
Absolutely.
And so I was doing pretty well in this class, and I was like, if I can just get to the midterm in October, everything will be fine, because they said that we could drop one grade. And so I was like, great, that October test, I'm going to need to drop, or that November test, I'm going to need to drop that, because that's going to be when I have the baby, right? And so I'm studying for this exam. I'm feeling really good. I'm like, the baby's still not here. I went to the doctor the day before the exam, and she's like, yeah, you're not really dilated. Everything looks fine. We can't say absolute, but it looks like you probably still got a week or two left, right? And I'm like, okay, great. And of
Perfect.
course, the next morning, which was the day of the exam, guess who decided to make her debut? My
Stop
daughter.
it. You were
Yep.
studying, pulling
I was
all-nighters,
studying.
and you just
I
wanted to
pulled an
get this exam
all-nighter.
done.
I did. I pulled an all-nighter, and I was like, I cannot wait to take this exam. It was actually at 8 a.m., which is so funny. But I was like, if I could just take this exam, I'll be good. And so around 3 in the morning, I'm like, no. I remember I went and got my mom, and I'm like, I think I'm in labor. Like, I was trying to brush my teeth. I threw up in the sink, and I'm like, definitely in labor. Like, yep, there's a baby coming. And so she's like, well, I don't know how quick things are going to go. Maybe do you think you should go to the hospital? I'm like, well, I'm trying to take my exam. I was
No,
like, so
no, you
if
are
I can
not.
just, I'm like, usually, they say first babies take a little bit longer. I'm like,
Oh my God.
what if I just wait and take my exam, and we'll already be by a hospital? Like, it's not a big deal.
Kristen.
Like, you can take me. My mom's like, absolutely not. We're going to the hospital right now. She's like, put your clothes on. Let's go.
my
And so
gosh.
she was born at 6 a.m., which is so
Okay.
funny. So I would not have made it to my 8 a.m. exam anyway.
Oh
But yeah,
my
she was born at 6
gosh.
a.m. the day of the midterm that I was trying to hold out for,
Oh
which
my
was
God.
just, it was hilarious. And so it's so funny because, everybody expects your first baby to take forever, right? And so my labor
Right.
was like 3 hours. And
Right.
my dad went to a job interview. Like he was like, I'm going to a job interview. I'll meet y'all at the hospital after. My best friend, she was at the University of Alabama, and she's like, okay, well, keep me posted. I'm gonna try to drive up after my first class. You know what I'm saying? And I
Sure.
like went in there, had a baby, and so I had to call everybody. I'm like, hey, surprise, the baby's here. Everyone was like, what?
Oh
But yeah, it was just kind of surreal. Like, I had this plan. It's like, again, I had a plan even for, I think sometimes my plans can even like get delusional. I'm like, this is the
my
only outcome. The only outcome that's logical here is that I take this exam and then I have the baby, right? And so that was the
Oh
plan. And so
my
I never even
goodness.
considered the fact that she would even be born a little bit early, but she was, and she was fine and she was beautiful. And
Oh.
um, I did not take that exam. That ended up being the one that I had to drop, but
Well,
it
I
was
think you
fine.
deserve to drop that one.
Yeah, I
I
think so. It
mean,
was fine.
after interviewing student moms, it's been a year of this, and I just always land on this fact that we are just a different breed of women. We
Yeah.
really are. The fact that you wanted to have, have this exam done and then
Yeah.
have the baby. I mean, I can just visualize you sitting there trying to take an exam, having contractions. If it was your way,
Yep.
you probably would have done that.
Yep. I probably would have. And literally,
Oh
they've
my
been like, take her to the
goodness.
hospital right now. There's a baby coming.
Oh my goodness. So, as you continue to go through college, what keeps you going? What was your driving force to finish school?
So I just am always like a proponent of finishing what you started, right? And that's not
Okay.
to say, now I know from life that plans change. But I was like, I have this baby and she deserves a good life. So
Mm,
whatever that looks like, whether I decide to be a doctor, great. Whether I decide to do something else, fine. But she deserves that I finish what I started. And then I was like, I deserve to finish what I started. So
right.
another part of this that I did at Mission is when we were like formulating my plan in the summer. My parents are
Right.
like, med school's never coming off the table. They're like, that's what you want to
Okay.
do it. And so early on, like when I found out I was pregnant, one of the things I started thinking was, originally I always planned that I would like go through med school, single, maybe get married or whatever, but I wouldn't have kids until I was finished because I didn't want, to kind of have kids while I was trying to go through med school and residency and that kind of
Right.
thing. But if I did, at least I'd be married, right? Because I have
Right.
the support of my husband. And so I already started thinking like, okay, and I know some people do this, and this is no slight to them, but I did not want to be the mom. You start thinking about the type of mom you want to be, right? And I was like, I don't
Right.
want to be the mom that like leaves my child with my parents to raise while I go chase my dream. Whatever the dream
Mm-hmm.
is, for some people it's like being a movie star or an actress or a singer. Some people it's being a doctor or whatever career they want. And I just realized early that that wasn't going to be me. And my parents were literally like, you can leave the baby with us. We'll keep her, raise her until you get ready, and then you can just come back and get her when you finish school. And I was like, I just don't want that life. And so I started
Mm.
thinking about, well, how do I build a life around things that I loved? And so I was like, I love books. I think I mentioned that to you. I actually enjoyed working at Books a Million. And I was like, I'm going to just, maybe I could be a librarian. I was like, I think I could be a
Okay.
librarian. I think I'd be a phenomenal librarian. So I got a job at a library. So I think I told you I had enough scholarship money where I didn't have to
Yes.
work until she was like one. And so towards
Wow.
the end of my second semester, my freshman year, an opportunity popped up at a local library to work there. And so I was like, I would love to see kind of if I even want to do this, right? So I got a job
Right.
at the library. And so I'm like working, I got this baby. We're just trucking along and making it happen. I'm studying at night. My aunt is keeping her for me. I like paid her to keep her a couple of days a week,
Yeah.
and so I had my classes
Wow.
structured to where I could work a couple of days, take class a couple of days, and then be off with her on the weekends. And so we were just kind of moving along.
Oh my goodness. So you had to pivot a little bit. You know,
Yeah,
you
for
went
sure.
in thinking you were going to go to Alabama and you were going to go into medical school, and talk me through your philosophy on pivoting when things don't look like they're going to be what you thought they were.
I think this taught me that I've learned to not be so rigid and just kind of
Mm,
go with wherever the Lord is leading me is where I want to go. And so I love a pivot this day. My family
mhm.
jokes that every couple of years I found a new career. I'm like, I'm over this one. Let's do something new. But I think there's just a beauty in being able to transition gracefully into anything. And so
Sure.
I think my journey as a teenage mom was just constant pivots and,
Yep.
seeing like, hey, this isn't working. Let's pivot over here. Well, this doesn't really look like the best way to go. So I'm going to try this way. So I've learned to just be real flexible. And I think I was just, figuring out day by day. Like I changed my major so many times. I changed my
Hmm.
career aspirations a bunch of times. I ended up
Right.
graduating with the bachelor's in biology that I started with, right? Because that's what I
Yep.
started with freshman year. I think I changed it to English. I changed it to nursing at one point. I like
Yep.
changed it a bunch of times and then came back around. I'm like, I love science. So I'm going to graduate with this degree, which, because by no one really cares what your bachelor's is in, right? As long as you got one. And
Right.
so that's kind of been my story. Like, I just had this bachelor's, and by the way, it's in biology. But I've only used that like once in my life in a job ever. So, but yeah, just pivots.
Pivoting is okay.
Hmm.
And, recognizing what we're doing. Like, is it for us? Is it for
Yeah,
somebody else? Is it because we feel like this immense pressure to walk out something we said we were going to do? I felt
right.
that a lot in college as well. I felt like, oh my gosh, if I pivot, I'm going to look flaky, or I'm going to look like, oh, I had to come down a notch just because I had
Yeah,
a child. Well, I am so incredibly glad that I pivoted along the way, because it led me to where I am today, as I'm sure you feel the exact same way.
for sure. Yeah, I even think back because even going to, God is in the details always. But my decision to go to UAB is where I met my husband now, my now husband. I met him at
Mm,
UAB. And like we both ended up at UAB at the very last minute kind of thing. Like he
yep.
decided to go at the last minute. I absolutely was a last minute addition to the student
Yes,
body. But that's where we met. And I'm like, I don't know if we would have met outside of that. We both lived in Birmingham our
exactly.
entire lives and never crossed paths.
Exactly.
And so that was where we
Exactly.
met. And so again, I just see like that even when you pivot, sometimes you see, exactly why you did what you did and why you ended up
Yes,
there. And so, yeah, I definitely see.
absolutely.
I tell people that all the time. Like, even though it doesn't look like what you thought it would look like,
Hmm.
there's still beauty in it. And so you can choose to either
Yes,
see the beauty or you can dwell on the things that did not work out. And so many people
exactly.
get stuck on this didn't go according to plan. This didn't work out the way I wanted it to do. And then they don't see like the sovereignty and the beauty in what actually did happen.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, knowing that Baby Steps has a hub on Auburn University's campus, and we've just opened up our house at the University of Alabama, how do you think your college journey as a student mom would have been different had we had our hub up and running at Alabama?
That's a great question. Honestly, I might have considered it. I think I would have, because briefly I did consider, that University of Alabama did have like some kind of family housing, and
Hmm.
I remember like looking at it and thinking I could make this work. I was like, I'll be down here with this baby by myself with like no support, and I was like, I don't want to do that. So I do think that if there had been a hub at the University of Alabama when I went, I definitely might have considered it. I'm sure my
Hmm.
mom and I would have gone down, looked, and kind of saw, what was going on and if it would be a good fit. But I think I would have considered it. I love that y'all are opening one because it just kind of reminds me of my journey. It just wasn't an option for me at the time, but I think it's an awesome option for these moms, especially ones that are already in school. I think for sure if I had been in school and then got pregnant, then I definitely think I would have stayed and tried to finish there, finish what I started. So, yeah, I think that's awesome.
Exactly. And there are just so many young women who might feel like they're in a similar situation that you were in, facing an unplanned pregnancy, feeling like their dreams are slipping away. What advice would you give them?
So I always tell people, like, your life's not over. This is just a new beginning. And if you start to think of it like a new beginning instead of, this incredibly devastating, traumatic experience that's happening to you, because I think that's where I went first. I went first to like, this is devastating, this is traumatic, but it truly is a new beginning. And I think once you get over the initial hump of the shock of it, and then come to terms with what's happening, I always say, like, my dad was furious, my mom was mad, I was upset, I was disappointed, but my daughter to this day is like the apple of my dad's eye. Like, he loves her. I have 4 kids, and we always say, like, you really shouldn't have a favorite. And I'm like, I think he might have a favorite. And he's like, it's because I saw her, like, born, baby, like, every single moment, because we lived at home. And so I always tell people, like, a lot of times I come across people whose parents are, like, really, really mad, right? That's usually the thing that makes everybody disappointed. Is like seeing the anger and the disappointment in their parents' faces. And I'm like,
Sure.
Most parents, I can't, tell you for certain that yours will. I'm like, most parents come around and they're going to just want to support you. And so I always tell people just to give people space. Teen moms, young moms, give your family space to process. You're processing in your way. Your parents are processing in their way. Give them time and give them space to do that. And then y'all can come together and formulate a plan. But most of the time, that's what I get, is people like freaking out. And they're like, my mom is so mad, or she won't speak to me, or whatever. And so I'm like, it's a process. So I guess that's what I would tell people, is that all of this is a process. And the thing with processes is that they change and they just keep happening over and over again. The rest of your life is going to be a work in progress. And, this is just the first for most people, like when you're young. It's like the first big pivot. And so there's going to be many, many more to come. And so that's what I always tell people too, is there's so many pivots to come. This is just the first one. And so it feels really massive now. In a couple of years, it won't feel so massive.
Absolutely.
So yeah, just trying to trust in the process.
Beautiful advice right there. And Krystin, if listeners want to connect with you or follow along with your journey on social media, where can they find you?
For sure. Okay. I have a blog. I used to blog full time. And so I don't blog as full time these days, but you can find me on Instagram and Facebook at Growing Up Godfrey. And that's also the name of my blog, my website.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for sharing your story with us today. Your strength, your resilience, your willingness to pivot when necessary truly is so inspiring. And I know this conversation will encourage so many others. So I appreciate you being here with us.
Well, thank you so much. It was great. I love being here.
Oh. And to all of our listeners, we hope to have you back for our next episode of Unplanned and Untold. Bye-bye. Unplanned and Untold drops new episodes every other Wednesday. We're available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. Don't forget to subscribe and give us a 5-star review if you love this episode. I'm Caitlin Willing, and this is Unplanned and Untold.